Welcome, everyone, to the May 20th, 2024 regular Board of Aldermen meeting. Would everybody please join with me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? Roll call, please.
Alderman Plufka.
Here.
Alderwoman Tice.
Here.
Alderman Weggie.
Here.
Alderwoman Sims.
Here.
Alderman Lockmiller.
Here.
Alderman Gould.
Here.
Alderwoman Harder, absent. Alderman Erger.
Here.
7 members present.
Thank you. Next up is approval or amendment of the agenda. Do we have any modifications? Any objection to approving the same by acclamation? Seeing none, it will be so approved. Next up is the announcements, appointments, proclamations, recognitions. We have just one, and that is the proclamation for the Emergency Medical Services Week, which started yesterday, May 19th to May 25th. So I'd just like to take the time to read this. And this is in recognition of emergency medical services to designate the week of May 19th through the 25th, 2024 as Emergency Medical Services Week. Whereas the emergency medical services is a vital public service, and whereas the members of the Brentwood Fire Department are ready to provide life-saving care to those in need 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and whereas access to quality emergency care dramatically improves the survival and recovery rate of those who experience sudden illness or injury, and whereas the Brentwood Fire Department has grown to fill a gap by providing important out-of-hospital care, including preventative medicine and access to telemedicine, and whereas the members of the Brentwood Fire Department engage in thousands of hours of specialized training and continuing education to enhance their life-saving skills, and whereas it is appropriate to recognize the value and the accomplishments of emergency medical services providers by designating Emergency Medical Services Week. Now, therefore, I, David A. Dimmitt, Mayor of the City of Brentwood, Missouri, in recognition of this event, do hereby proclaim the week of May 19th through the 25th, 2024, as Emergency Medical Services Week. I encourage, the 50th anniversary of EMS Week theme is EMS Week, Honoring Our Past, Forging Our Future. I encourage the community to observe this week with appropriate programs, ceremonies, and activities. Presented this 20th day of May 2024, David A. Dimmitt, Mayor. Thank you. Next up is public hearing. We have two things. First is text amendment to Division 2 Home Occupations of Article 5 Supplemental Regulations of the city's zoning ordinance to comply with recent state legislation. And with that, I will gavel open the public hearing.
Good evening. Whitney Kelly on behalf of the City of Brentwood. This is to comply with state regulations regarding home occupations. The city is prohibited from naming certain specific home occupations, but we can still require specific requirements such as parking and occupancy regulations. So we've revised the ordinance to meet with those regulations.
And this is in response to the legislation that was passed last year.
Yes.
Or 2 years ago. I think it was
Yes.
maybe just last year. Okay. Do we have any questions for the Whitney on this? Okay. Thank you. Anybody in the public care to speak on this particular issue? And that is this text amendment to the zoning code relating to home-based businesses or occupations.
No one online.
Okay. If not, then I will close the public hearing for that item. Next up is a public hearing for Beck Reed Rogue Architects on behalf of McDonald's USA LLC, located at 1595 South Hanley Road, which has submitted revision to the conditional use permit for modifications to the building at 1595 South Hanley Road. So with that, oh, I'm sorry. Actually, I made a mistake. I should not have closed the hearing on the first item. So we can just kind of go backwards and pretend that didn't take place. And
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, the city ordinance has a requirement that notice for public hearings related to zoning amendments must be published in a newspaper which is other than newspapers used for legal notices. which unfortunately is contrary to the statute, which requires zoning notices to be published in a newspaper authorized to carry legal notices. Because of this publishing schedule for the only newspaper that satisfies that requirement, which is only published monthly, we are not able to advertise in time for this public hearing. And we may not be able to advertise 15 days in advance of the June meeting of the Board of Aldermen. So what it is recommended is that the board keep the public hearing open. We'll see what we can do about publication for June, but it may be necessary to lay it over to the July meeting for conclusion.
Okay.
And we'll be working on a text amendment
To address the publication notice.
to address this process.
Well, thank you for that, and again, I apologize for closing the public hearing on that item. So that item will remain open to the next meeting and maybe as well into July meeting. So, but with that, we are going to we're going to open the public hearing for the McDonald's matter. Whitney?
So McDonald's restaurant on 1595 South Hanley Road is doing some interior revisions or modifications to the building, as well as exterior changes to the elevations that were previously approved by ordinance. Therefore, they are required to come back through for modification of that ordinance, which is before you tonight. The elevations were typically minor. South Hanley is controlled by St. Louis County, so we've reached out to them, and they are having future plans for widening of the sidewalk. So there is a condition that the property owners will work with St. Louis County when that does come through in the future, and they were agreeable to that. There were some changes suggested by the Planning and Zoning Commission on the April 10th meeting, and those are addressed with this ordinance. So.
Any questions? Now, this one we can close the public hearing? Or really?
Standing, yes, sir.
Okay. Does anybody in the public care to address this particular public hearing item relating to the McDonald's restaurant? If not, then I will close the public hearing on that item. Brings us to citizen comments. Anybody here in the public care to address the Board of Aldermen, now is the time to do so. All we ask is that you just go to that podium, state your name and your address, and you'll be given up to 3 minutes.
Hello again, Bridget Sigilito at 2901 Brezzo. Yes, you guys can guess why I'm here, across the street from the park. It is still an utter disaster. People are still parking on my lawn. There is no parking on my street, and I am still getting trash in my yard. I have not been able to mow my lawn because we don't have a sidewalk. I can't get into the street to mow my yard on the weekends, pretty much anytime. Really, we really need resident-only parking on Brezzo. I believe I had emailed Steve, and he said that that is happening. Would love an update on, the process, when we can expect that, and I would like to reiterate that it should be also on Pendleton Avenue, because that is just as troublesome as Brezzo is. I started a petition, and I believe some of my neighbors are actually here tonight because I asked them to come to also voice their opinions. So that's what I got. I don't know if you guys can comment on the updates of the resident-only parking because it is an utter nightmare. I had one Brentwood police officer tell me to just park in a different neighborhood instead of parking at my house. So I would really like to park at my house.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we don't have a back and forth, as you may or may not know on this. At the end of the public comments, if somebody on the board wants to address any of the public comments, they're free to do so.
Got it.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Owner Cericas, currently 2811 Brazeau, formerly 8518 or currently 8518 White, formerly 8728 Brenshire Walk. I've been here for 20 years. Thank you, sir, for your service. But in addition to parking, I think there's a speeding problem on that Brazeau Avenue. And if that is not handled anytime soon, it's going to be in one of the newspapers that there's going to be a tragedy. That's a speculation, obviously. But recently, when Brentwood, Missouri is listed in top 10 of Forbes magazine as one of the top neighborhoods to live in, we don't want to see anything of that nature. I have my 3 little ones here. They're behaving really nicely, surprisingly. But I recently moved there, and because of the park, I moved there, right? I don't care about the parking. Parking is fine, but there's a lot of people who speed on that street. When a family of 4 is walking down the street, and because there's no sidewalks, and some people have, don't step on the grass, I couldn't care less about my own lawn when it comes to a child's life. So a few times I've called the Brentwood PD. The comments were made to come here. I just got that invitation thanks to her, because otherwise I don't know what the dates are, even though I am active, as you see. And too bad St. Louis County doesn't have such a vibrant vote T-shirt. But at the same time, it's a public danger, in my opinion. And the Brentwood PD has done not enough, in my opinion. Whether the resources they have, sure, there are people in the park, but there's nobody on the street overseeing the speedsters, especially when people with little kids are walking, and sometimes you open a door, kids run out. So speed bumps help. There's one that was put on Rosalie right after the post office because of the hidden bump, and that helps significantly reduce that speed on that street. So put a couple of speed bumps. I don't care if people park on my lawn.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, if not, we will, oh, okay, sure.
Shirley Brown, 2813 Brazos. We lived in the home for 80 years. We're the oldest residents there. My 2 brothers have just been put into a nursing home. We have power of attorney over the home, my sister and I, Sylvia. And we can't park there either at all on the weekends. And cars are coming and going. They're going up, they're turning around, they're coming back, they're turning around, they're coming up. They're going down into the apartments. They're just meandering everywhere looking for a spot to go. So we were thinking 2 resident-only parking perhaps. Maybe one side, maybe even making it a one-way. I don't know what all the resolves could be, but something needs to be done, most definitely.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? If not, we will close the public comment. I do want to thank you all for taking time to come out here. I've said this before, and I know I speak on behalf of the board. It means a lot to us when people take time out of their schedules to come to City Hall and voice your concerns and let us know when there are issues that you're having. Anybody have, yeah, go ahead, Steve.
I know the board has passed resident-only parking in that area. It's going to take some time before posts can be driven. Dig Right needs to go out there and do all the utility markings and that type of thing. So it's coming. Just be a little bit more patient. And then a procedure for doing placards or stickers for your car is being developed by the staff. So there's plans in the works. Just give us a little bit of time.
Yeah, they have heard you, and so the board approved that at the last meeting, I think it was. And as you may or may not have known, at the last meeting, there was quite a bit done by this board relative to the parking issue at the new playground or the new park. They took up a number of matters, and normally those are done at 2 separate meetings, but because of the urgency of it, this board went ahead and approved those measures at both one meeting, one of which was the residential parking on Brazos and on Pendleton. The other thing they did is they approved the installation of 2 new parking lots on the south and north side of Manchester Road, hopefully to relieve some of the pressure that you're seeing on Brazos and on Pendleton. And we're guiding people to go park on those lots. Once the one on the north side of Manchester opens, which I think is going to be tomorrow or Wednesday, because we have to get it striped, that will have added about 100 additional parking spaces. So it's more than what's down there right now. And it's just a matter of directing people to use that. So a combination of that and the signs limiting parking on Brazos and Pendleton residents only, hopefully you'll see some improvement, because it's not lost on this board, believe me. They all understand. If they were in your shoes, they would have the same issues. They would be concerned as well. So that they have worked really hard and quickly to try to address those concerns. So I want to thank the board for doing that. Anybody else? Okay. Well, this really isn't the forum for that, because otherwise we might have a whole bunch of, if you want to stick around and ask a question, or if you want to email, I'm sure your two aldermen will get right back to you. We'll move on to the mayor and alderman reports. First up is the mayor's report. I have just a few things, and that is to kind of build on what I just mentioned about the 2 new parking lots. We're happy to announce that, which I thought in record time, this board approved the construction, the spending of the funds for these 2 new parking lots, and it was done. That was voted on, I think, May 6th, and whatever that Monday was, 2 weeks ago today. And the first one opened last week. It was open, I think, on maybe Saturday, may have been the first day that it was open. And then, like I said, the one on the north side of Manchester will be open tomorrow or Wednesday. And they're great locations because they're right on the trail system. So you park your car there and you can get to the trail that's right where the tunnel is underneath Manchester Road. So we're doing all we can to try and help and provide that some relief, and also to direct users of the playground and the park to go park there. The second thing is a report on it's a legislative report. So that's it on the parking, but they are working on that. And the legislative report, I'm happy to report that the folks down in Jeff City concluded their session last Friday with doing hardly anything. And so you hate to say that that's a sign of progress, but that's where we are in the state of Missouri. This was the second worst session in terms of the number of bills that were passed. Second only to, I believe, last year when they passed 40. This year, I think they had 1,700 bills filed to take up, and they only passed 46. And as you all know, the ones that was really concerning me, and I know was concerning you, was the sales tax on groceries, the exclusion of that, or the exemption of sales tax on groceries. And the good news is it really never got any traction this time, unlike in the prior years. And I think that's because the efforts that the municipalities all across the state took. We did our best to educate the legislators how devastating this would be to all these governments, the counties and the municipalities, and how fruitless it would be. They talked about how the average house spends $1,000 a month on groceries. Now, I think personally that's a high number. I don't spend $1,000 a month on groceries, but let's assume it's $1,000. Well, the sales tax is $60 for groceries. And so if they exempted the sale of groceries from sales tax, a house would look to save about $60 a month. Now, that might seem like a great deal, but when you look at what we would have to do to make up that gap, one thing we would look at doing is start charging for trash and yard waste and recycling pickup. City of Clayton just had to do that, and they're spending about $40 a month per household for that. So if we did that, there goes 40 of the $60 in savings. And then we'd still have a shortfall, because we'd be losing millions and millions of dollars if that had passed. So at the end of the day, it really results in no savings for the residents to eliminate the sales tax, and I think we did a good job of educating the legislators, and I think that's why it never really got any traction this year. So who knows what the future holds on that issue, but I can assure you we're going to do what we can to make sure that it doesn't get passed. Next up is, I'm not going to say equally important, but it's still important because I've heard from a lot of people, and that's the Donut Drive-In. It was scheduled to open on Cinco de Mayo. There were some issues, but I'm happy to report, I just heard from Whitney tonight that they've now pushed it back, but they're sure it's going to happen on June the 2nd for the Donut Drive-In. Drive up, not the drive-in. Sorry, thank you. And then finally, I believe we have a coffee with the mayor next Thursday, not this Thursday, but that's going to be the last Thursday in the month of May. So that's it for the mayor, Alderman Plufka.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Because we took up so many of the parking issues and in the last month, we have nothing in public safety before us for consideration, either from the departments or from the city. We're going to cancel Wednesday's public safety meeting.
Thank you. Alderwoman Tice.
Well, Alderman Plufka still has something on Wednesday night because the Ward 1 meeting will be on Wednesday night at 6:30 p.m. at the Rec Center. And then I'd just like to thank Mayor Demmett for the time that he spends going to Jefferson City on behalf of all of us as citizens of Brentwood. He serves us well and spends a lot of time doing that, and we should thank him for that.
Oh, thank you. Alderwoman Sims.
The regularly scheduled Ways and Means committee meeting for June, which would have been on Thursday the 6th, is going to be rescheduled at a date that is still to be determined. We should know, we had some availability issues for our consultant who's going to report on our compensation analysis, so we're working through that availability, but stay tuned. Hopefully we'll get it scheduled in the following week or so. That's it.
Thank you. Alderman Weggie.
Yeah, I'd like to thank Dan and his team. So on Mary Kay Court, we've been talking about for a long time. There's a circle island in the middle, and the trucks can't make it over, so it's kind of a muddy mess. So they installed the True Grid pavers as kind of an experiment to see how it works. You know, it's down, so we'll watch it for a little bit. So if you're on Mary Kay Court, go check it out. And I think if it works, that might be a solution for, I believe, the other 14 circles that we have in the cities that have this kind of problem. So thanks, Dan, for that.
Thank you. Alderman Lockmuller. Alderman Gould.
Yes, the Communications Committee that was supposed to be scheduled for tomorrow night is going to be canceled. We'll push that a month, so we'll just reconvene at our next meeting next month. And then our regularly scheduled Ward 3 meeting will be next Tuesday, the 28th. If I'm not mistaken. Yep, 28th at 6:30 at the Rec Center. So Ward 3 residents, you're welcome to join.
Thank you. Alderman Ergert.
Yeah, it's just like to report that Brentwood Forest will be hosting their next board meeting next Tuesday, the 28th at 6 p.m. in the clubhouse in Brentwood Forest. Thank you.
Thank you. And that brings us to the City Administrator Report. We have 5 items. First is the presentation of the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2023 annual audit.
Thanks, Mayor and board members. My name is Andrew Zabel. I'm a principal of Clifton Larson Allen, or CLA. I'm responsible for overseeing the audit work for the city of Brentwood. About 2 weeks ago, I met with the Ways and Means Committee members. I'm happy to present that really things have gone much smoother than they have in the past. Typically, it's been months, if not years, since you're executing your audits. So we wrapped up our audit procedures effectively at the end of April. I think that's in record speed compared to prior period. But I really think it's due to the strong leadership that you have from Michelle in the finance department. So really just honestly pleased to present the good results. You are not required to have a single audit. Single audit's only required when you spend more than $750,000 worth of federal expenditures. You likely will be subject to one for fiscal year 2024. You know, in the past, we've oftentimes had internal control matters that we've had to communicate to you. I'm pleased to say that there's really no significant internal control matters that we're required to communicate. We've had an unmodified opinion, so that's the cleanest opinion you can have. And overall, just, you know, really strong responsiveness and timely execution on the matters that we can communicated at the finance department last year. If you guys have any specific questions, I'm here to answer them, but I went through the report and my materials in more detail with the Ways and Means Committee.
Okay, thank you. Well, first of all, I'd like to take this opportunity to also thank Michelle. You know, what a terrific addition to city staff, at the risk of embarrassing her. But needless to say, that has been an issue. The audit has been an issue with this city, with the Department of Finance for a number of years. And Michelle came in here, and I think her number one goal was to address that and make sure we got it done timely. And so I'm happy to hear that that's what happened. And she's really done a great job with her department. So thank you so much, Michelle. Any questions for Mr. Zabel? Okay, thank you. So we just need a motion to accept the 2023 audit.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Great,
Thank you. Next up is the Brentwood Bound update. Craig Schluter.
Good evening, Craig Schluter with Navigate Building Solutions. I'll be providing the Brentwood Bound update. Starting with construction costs, $197,204.19 was spent on the May 20th today, and May 6th's warrantless. Next is soft costs, $69,040.71 was spent on design, Missouri Department of Natural Resources, legal, project management, and material testing fees. Going to categories of funding, the city received a reimbursement check from Great Ridge Greenway. They received the final payment from the 319 grant, so that grant has been paid in full. And then there's an area that's yellow at the bottom called Russell Trail Brentwood Bound Fund. I had thought there was going to be a transfer that was going to take place from another city fund over to Brentwood Bound, but that transfer is not going to take place. The city's just going to utilize those funds and pay the pay applications from that fund, not through Brentwood Bound. So there's just not a transfer that's going to happen. So that's been reconciled on my side. Besides that, the economic development sales tax amounts were updated on down below. And then lastly, I'll mention that the Brentwood Boulevard was shut down roughly at 7 p.m. on Friday. I just want to let you know it was reopened right around 5 o'clock today. So right before the meeting, I drove back and forth over it. So it is open, and it's a big milestone. It took over 5 years to get to that point. So the servicing's done. Brentwood Boulevard's back open. The next step will be the water work need to be completed, which now they're saying it's going to be next week. Then the contractor will do all, Gershenson will do all the improvements of Brentwood Boulevard, and they'll tie in the trail to the servicing. And then there'll be some more signal work that'll take place between Union Pacific and Gershenson over the next couple months. So this was a major milestone that just took place over the weekend, and from what I heard, it went relatively well. So.
Where are we on the arms coming down, the railroad crossing, or arms and
The new arms?
Yeah.
So that, the signal work, we have a meeting on Wednesday to talk about when Union Pacific plans to do that, but from what we're being told, it'll happen mid to late summer.
Okay.
So we're hoping to crossing our fingers, to get everything done by fall.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Any questions
Thank
for
you.
Craig? Yes, Alderman Gould.
Will that signaling work be as disruptive to Brentwood Boulevard when they need to do that? Or is that, do you think we're past the major
Yeah.
disruption on?
I haven't heard of any more shutdowns that'll take place. We'll continue to do, we'll shut down lanes, but this is the only overall Brentwood Boulevard shutdown that
Okay.
I've heard.
Great, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, thanks, Craig.
Thank you.
Next up is the Brentwood Days Carnival Ride wristbands operational change.
So at the Public Works Committee meeting last week ago, we talked about Brentwood Days and what to charge for wristbands. And through the discussion, we decided it would be $20 for a one-day wristband or $35 for both days. Residents would need to come to the community center to purchase those. In talking with staff, we thought we can do that all the way up through noon, 3, 4 o'clock that Saturday. We can't sell them down at Brentwood Days just because we won't have the capacity to do so, but they'd be able to go to the rec center during even that day. So we'd like to start selling the wristbands on July 1st. And we thought we'd limit the total number of wristbands to 6 per household. That gives grandparents a chance to buy some for grandkids if they're coming in, something like that. And if a household needs more than 6, then they can ask for an exception, and I would have to approve that.
Okay. Have any questions? Alderwoman Sims.
Admittedly, I didn't see the Public Works meeting, but I had a question. In order to prove up residency, the memo says you'd have to provide an occupancy permit, an unpaid utility bill, or personal property tax receipt. Why wasn't a driver's license among those qualifiers?
Mainly because the driver license can last for 6, 7, 8 years, and so you can move. Those requirements are the same requirements you need to prove residency for the Heights membership. So anyone who's going to the Heights has to, it's that same process.
Okay.
Alderman Gould.
Have you given thought to how you're going to be able, since you can buy either a single day or both days, are they going to be color-coded each day?
Yeah, we'll have
How
two
is that
different.
going to work?
Yeah, we'll have two different bands, one for Saturday, one for Sunday. We're looking into those right now, whether there'll definitely be different colors. We might have text on them as well, just so you can't find a color wristband somewhere
And
to go.
then copy it, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And I just have a comment, you know, this is a result of years of us hearing from residents about wanting some changes to be thought through. This is not an easy thing to do, so I appreciate staff's willingness to come up with some solutions. I just want to remind the board that, you know, as we've done in the years past, especially since COVID, we've made some changes to Brentwood Days, and we adapt and modify as we see fit. And so we're adding additional rides to be able to do this. We're changing the fireworks to drone displays so that we're able to add additional rides. So we're doing a lot of modifications. I know staff is working on additional entertainment opportunities. The wristbands are for the rides, unlimited rides for residents or kids and grandkids of residents. And I think, you know, it'll be a good test this year.
Anybody else? Alderman Weggie.
Eric, do we know if, will the vendor be selling wristbands at Brentwood Days as well?
No.
Or just tickets?
Yeah, we feel like that's not something we should offer down at the carnival. We want to make sure that that's limited only to residents and that we control that process. So the carnival ride operation will only be selling tickets. So
Okay.
$1 per ticket or 24 for 20.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? If not, what we're looking for is a motion to approve the cost and process for the Brentwood Days Carnival Rides wristbands for residents.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Eric. Next up is the permanent parking reservation policy for the event pavilion at Brentwood Park.
Yeah, so this again, something we discussed at the Public Works meeting on May 9th and had a lot of discussion. And the Public Works Committee asked the staff to bring forth a policy tonight for reserving 2 spaces for any event pavilion rental. Again, staff kind of looked at a lot of things of what we could do, and what we feel is the best option is to get a movable parking space reserve sign that we can stick basically at the front of the parking space. Our feelings that if you put something at the back in the grass, that people just ignore it and still park there, and then we'll still have those issues. We can put it in the front of the space at the beginning when staff gets there before the park gets crowded. And then we have part-time staff coming in half hour beforehand. Their first job will be to greet whoever has those two parking passes, get them set up, get them in, and then ultimately, as we discussed, that once the renter has those 2, they can give them to whoever they want to use those spots, or if they want to move out and let someone in, they could do that too. So this is kind of an interim policy until we get hopefully another permanent parking lot built. But that's what we were asked to bring forward, and that's what we're looking to do.
Okay. Need a motion to that effect, if anybody cares to make it.
Yeah, so moved.
Okay.
Second.
Any discussion?
Eric,
Yeah,
do we
Alderman
need to do anything with ordinances because we're now creating 2 permit-only parking spots? Is there anything we need to do like we do on roads?
I don't think so, because they're not going to be permanent throughout all the time. This is only going to be on days there's rental. So primarily we're heavy for Saturday, Sunday. So Monday through Friday, those will still be regular parking spots.
Okay, and so basically if somebody rents, they would be given 2 sheets of paper that are the permit and keep those on, and that's how.
Put them on their dashboards, yeah.
And then if somebody parks in there without a permit, then we would tow them.
Yeah, so that's the first thing the staff will do is make sure those spots are still reserved. If something were to happen, unfortunately, they'll be calling the PD to help out with that situation.
Okay.
Anybody else? Not all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And Eric, I just want to say, well done. I was at the playground last night, giving a tour of it to my daughter who'd been gone for a number of months. And so I was there around 6:30, 7 o'clock Sunday night. There's still a lot of people there, and the place there was a mess. Trash and different articles of clothing, a shoe here, you know, a towel there. And then I was down there this morning as part of my workout around 6:30, and it looked spotless. So your staff did a fantastic job of turning that around and getting it ready for Monday.
Thank you. They take a lot of pride in that place and want to make sure that everyone enjoys it and that it's clean when they show up. And so we know that first thing we do in the morning is trash and go through and pick up everything.
Cool. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Next up is the OMCI tax rate for the Deer Creek watershed. Handling that, Dan?
Okay. With the passage of Proposition S from MSD, the OMCI, which is the current tax for operations, maintenance, construction, and improvements, that's the OMCI acronym, it'll go away at the end of this year unless we want something done differently, and then it's still not a done deal because the rest of the Deer Creek watershed municipalities have to agree as well. So basically, if we do nothing, if you want to repeal the OMCI, it'll strictly be Proposition S at $75,000 a year. If you want to participate with the other municipalities, we need roughly 70%, so like 15 out of the 21 to pass, saying that they want to leave on the OMCI, and the group thinks that 25% of the current OMCI would remain on. So that would give us roughly another 69,000 onto the 75. So you can either do strictly Prop S or OMCI plus Prop S. Those are your two options that we would need some sort of discussion on and approval. We do have a meeting with MSD tomorrow with the other Deer Creek watershed municipalities.
But again, if we move forward with continuing the OMCI, it's dependent upon what the other municipalities do.
It would go to the MSD board, and then ultimately they would have say. But if it loses traction at this stage, if there's, say, 25% of the OMCI folks that are with Deer Creek, then it would just be Prop S.
All right, so what we need is some direction, a choice between the two alternatives or options. Yeah.
I have a question. So, in the MSD presentation on this originally, they talked about maybe changing the way that OMCI is awarded and being able to allow us, because they currently take a little bit of that every time it's awarded, right? And
Right.
So they were talking about not only could we potentially keep it on, but at a reduced level so that the city itself isn't actually losing money because of Prop S.
Right, that's the 25% that's solely ours. They get nothing, they strictly use Prop S.
Okay.
They being MSD.
So they wouldn't take it, if we kept it at the 25%, MSD, that would be all OMCI district funding for OMCI district people to use.
Correct.
Okay, great, thank you. And I think it's important to note that we do have a large stormwater master plan that will take generations to accomplish. The idea of reducing, because of Prop S, completely reducing to almost half of what we currently receive through OMCI is a concerning possibility. So the idea of reducing it to 25%, I think, is a very reasonable way to not negatively impact the city and our plans for stormwater, while also reducing the burden on residents who pay it.
Not yet? Okay. Alderwoman Tice.
I'll just echo agreement with what Alderman Gould said. I think one of the biggest issues that I hear about is our water issues, and we'll never get to them if we just use the smaller amount that we're getting from OMCI. And I think this proposal is a little more clear than what we had the last time we discussed this, that it is a reduction in the current OMCI rate. It's not the full amount that residents had been paying previously, so it seems like a very reasonable way to go so that we can start chipping away at the dozens of water issues that we currently know about.
Alderman Lockmiller.
I want to make sure I'm following this right, Dan. If we tell MSD that we want to participate in the 25% OMCI, all the other municipalities get on board and they say they want to participate also. It's still the board's decision of MSD whether to turn that on or off. So even though everybody would be on board, they could say, well, we just don't really want to do that. And then we'd go back to just Prop S, right?
Right, ultimately, it's the board's decision, but if there's an overwhelming majority, you know, say 80–90% of these folks that want to leave it on, I would think they would look at that a little more closely.
Thanks.
Alderman Weggie.
Yeah, so I feel like we passed a resolution in 2019 opposing MSD turning OMCI back on, so that was our official position at the time. I think the residents have voted to tax themselves with Prop S. I feel like, you know, OMCI was turned off for a long time. They came back. Brentwood said that we didn't want to turn it back on. They did anyway. We found a use for that money with the Stormwater Master Plan. I agree that this is going to make it take longer, but it's already taking forever. So 2 times forever is still forever, in my opinion. And so we'll just have to, you know, $75,000 a year on it is what we'll be able to spend. So I am not in favor of directing them to take even 25% of OMCI. I think we should do what our residents asked.
Okay, well, we're waiting for a motion. Anybody?
I'll make the motion that we direct staff to communicate that we will continue to participate at OMCI with the 25%, if the other members agree.
So the second recommendation.
Yes, second
Okay.
recommendation.
And I'll second that.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to, the second recommendation. Any discussion on that? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Opinion of the chair, I've got a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-2 vote, 5 in favor, 2 against. So the motion does pass. Gets us down to the consent agenda. We have 8 items under that. Do we have any questions about any of these items or any requests to remove any of the items from the consent agenda? If not, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice?
Yes.
Alderman Weggie?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Erger?
Yes.
Motion carries by a vote of 7-0.
Okay, thank you. That gets us down, we have no old business, so we'll move down to item 11, new business. First up is Resolution 1503, and that is a resolution approving a change order to the contract with Jacobs Engineering Group for the design of an additional parking lot for Brentwood Park.
So another thing that's been discussed is the possibility of adding another permanent parking lot on Brentwood Avenue. We've taken a look at that. We talked to Jacobs. Obviously, they seem to be the most fit organization to do that since they did all the design for Brentwood Bound and have all the water calculations, everything else I'll need that will make that design quicker. And so in talking to them, they did a quick thumbnail sketch, is what I put in board docs today, and they think they could do 29 spaces. At Public Works, Alderman Gould asked about whether or not we could design something that would keep the landscaping. I did talk to them about that last week, and got back to me late today, and he said that they're looking at the sketches again in anticipation of maybe this getting approved. They actually think they can get close to 40 spots if they remove landscaping, and it'd be somewhere right around 25 if we keep the landscaping. So that is kind of where we're at right now. He did say that none of that included accessible parking, which would have to be considered if this was a permanent parking lot. So we are looking for a motion to move to approve the change order with Jacobs for not to exceed $40,000 to do a design for additional parking on Brentwood.
We're not making the decision at this point on with or without the landscape, it's just to the change order.
Correct.
Okay. Can we get a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Alderman Plufka.
So what is the change order?
The change order is to do a design, which would include bid documents
From
and
no
everything.
design to doing a design? That's the change? I'm not sure I understand what we're voting on. That's what I'm
Yeah,
not clear about.
It's to do a change, the change orders with their Brentwood Bound contract, their overall Brentwood Bound contract, since they're still under
Additional
contract.
work.
Yep, the additional work to do this design for the parking lot.
I have a second question, please. Have you considered single direction parking in that space. I saw Alderman Gould's sketch. I saw the sketch from Jacobs. I'm wondering about how much havoc is going to be played with people going both directions in and out from that space, from one center, side by side, entrance, exit. And I'm wondering if it doesn't make some sense to maybe think about a one-directional space where people come in, park on an angle, and go out, all going in the same direction. So they would come in at the northernmost point of that green space and exit at the southernmost point, trying to preserve the landscaping too. I know that's probably not the most efficient use of that space. It'll probably result in less spaces even than the 25, but I look at that and I think of all the traffic that's going on there and the residents' point with regard to the traffic that's going on there and the kids that are running around and the people that are already probably driving too fast through there with all the stuff that's in there. I wonder if we gave any thought to a design that it would be simpler at least, and it wouldn't require people parking in there to be looking both directions for people moving in and moving out simultaneously.
The simple answer, or the quick answer, is that we haven't had a whole lot of discussion on the design.
Okay.
What we are asked to do is see if it was feasible, and so we asked how many spots could we get.
I understand. I
think traffic flow is one thing I have talked to him about, is that
Okay.
that would be important to really think about traffic flow. So that will be a discussion, as well as any other code regulations that we have to work with as far as planning development as well. So.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sure. Anything else? Alderman Gould.
Yeah, I actually really like that comment. So if we do pass this and we go into design, I think that would be something, it could preserve the landscaping, which I think is an important thing for us to do. We've got a lot right now that has 68, I think, spaces, 67 spaces. So the addition of around 30 spaces is good. I don't think we need to pack that full of parking spaces when we lose the nature and beauty of what we put in there for a reason.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Not roll call, please.
Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice?
Yes.
Alderman Weggie?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Erger?
Yes.
Motion carries by a vote of 7-0.
Okay, thank you. Next item is Bill number 6500. Can we get a first reading by title only, please?
Bill number 6500, first reading, an ordinance amending Chapter 215 and Chapter 225 of the Brentwood Code relating to smoking.
So this is something that I've been talking about for a little bit of time, is wanting to prohibit smoking within all parks. It is something that's done in St. Louis County, the city of Clayton, city of Olivet, Webster Groves, and even Wildwood. So there's obviously, don't have to go through all the benefits of why to do this. And so as we're talking about this, obviously the Missouri passed the law legalizing marijuana, so we said we had to figure out how to address that as well. So we kind of took them both at the same time and created the longest ordinance I've ever written in my life. And that's what we're looking to do.
So that would prohibit smoking of both tobacco products and marijuana products in city parks.
Correct. All city facilities.
Paper products.
And vapes, yep.
And what? Vapes as well, right. Okay. Any discussion on that? Yes, Alderman Lockmiller.
Eric, I'm looking at in chapter 225 under, and this is somewhat unrelated to what we're trying to do here, but we're amending something. 225.030 closing hours. In that paragraph, it states Brentwood Parks. Okay, is that, and the hours of that they stay open?
Yeah, so
Do you
you're
need
right.
to do a name change on that, or?
Yeah, you're right. That does something that needs to be fixed. And at the next Public Works meeting, we'll be bringing more revisions to Chapter 225 relating to other park rules. So I will amend that at that time.
I don't think our residents that are here tonight would want to see it open till 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah, definitely not.
All right. And then I just have a question for the city attorney.
Yep.
Mr. O'Keefe, on the Article 225, or the 215, where it's got halfway down on the first page, the clean air, smoking prohibited, It says code enforcement officer, and it says fire marshal. Are we needing really to have that say, this is within our parks? Are we going to really call the fire marshal if someone's smoking marijuana or cigarettes or whatever?
I don't think the code enforcement officer is charged with enforcing this, but I need to read through the provision further. The prohibition is against smoking. I don't think the duty to do that, to enforce that, rests with the code enforcement officer. I think it's with all staff, and it's, the summonses would be issued by the police department, not the code enforcement officer.
Ticket would be issued by,
So I also would need to see how throughout the chapter, the term code enforcement officer is used, because I don't think all provisions in chapter 215 are here.
okay. All right, thanks.
Alderman Gould? No? Okay. Okay. Well, time is of the essence on a lot of these things, so we are asking for a second read. So can we get a
So
motion
moved.
to that effect?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion for a second read? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, can we get a second read on Bill number 6500 by title only, please?
Bill number 6500, second reading and consideration for an adoption, an ordinance amending chapter 215 and chapter 225 of the Brentwood City Code relating to smoking.
Thank you. Chair would entertain a motion to perfect Bill number 6500 into ordinance form.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Alderman Gould.
I have a question on somewhat of the enforcement of this, and it may be for city attorney or the chief, I don't know. As we know, that with, especially with people parking along residential streets or even in the parking lot, does this prohibit people from smoking on parking lots? And obviously, we can't probably enforce it on a residential street that's adjacent to it. Is that, am I correct in assuming that?
I would lean to Kevin on that one, but I would assume the answer is yes. What the code will say is parking lot. So you'll be able to do it within your vehicle. Once you step out onto the parking lot, you will not, it'll be prohibited.
You can sit in your car and do it in the parking lot of our park, but if you get out, you're,
That's correct.
okay, okay. Yeah.
I would ask the current prohibition as to smoking. Anyway, I mean, we already have regulations. I think the changes to this chapter are to incorporate marijuana, right?
And vaping.
And vape products, but I don't think the current regulations as to smoking are changed appreciably by that.
Okay.
And I would add also that under the constitutional amendment, smoking marijuana in public places is prohibited.
Even if it's you're in a public place, but you're in your car, which is your own private property.
I think there's indeed a specific prohibition against smoking marijuana in a car.
Okay.
Say there is.
I believe there is.
Okay, so I'm kind of confused on how this is going to be enforced. I mean, it is an issue. I was there yesterday for a graduation party, and as a family rode our bikes up, I mean, there was marijuana smell everywhere in the park. That's not something I like to have around my kids or the other kids that are around it as well. I wonder about, it's one thing to put it in the ordinance, and we likely have to in order to even have some teeth to be able to enforce it, but I guess I'm questioning, how are we enforcing this?
I mean, the simple answer is that it's being enforced two ways. So the first will be my staff who's out there on any regular basis will go up and most likely be very respectful. It's like, maybe you don't know, smoking is prohibited within the parks. We'll ask them to stop smoking. If they comply, we'll have no issue. If they continue, or if it's other times where we're not around, then we're gonna ask the PD to assist with this, much like other ordinances.
And then if your staff isn't notifying us, so is it then reliant on somebody to complain, or? I mean, is that what we're waiting for?
No, I mean, it will be our staff and the PD who make sure that they have to do it. Are we going to be out there every single time it happens? No. I was in the city of Clayton when they prohibited smoking in the parks. Does it stop people from smoking in the parks at all times? No. Did it greatly reduce the amount of people who are smoking in the parks? Yes.
Okay, thank you.
If I may add, the Missouri Constitutional Amendment specifically prohibits the consumption of marijuana while being in physical control of a motor vehicle and smoking marijuana within a motor vehicle while it is being operated. So being in physical control, one who is seated in a motor vehicle in the driver's seat is in physical control. Plus, smoking marijuana is prohibited in a location where smoking tobacco is prohibited under the Missouri Constitution. So this is all in line with that.
Anyone else? Okay, my notes, we had a motion to perfect and a second on that. So if there's no further discussion, roll call, please.
Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice?
Yes.
Alderman Weggie?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller? Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Erger?
Yes.
By a vote of 7-0, Bill 6500 will become ordinance number 5128.
Thank you. Next up is Bill number 6501. Can we get a first read by title only, please?
Bill number 6501, first reading, an ordinance amending Chapter 225 of the Brentwood City Code relating to additional rules, regulations, and restrictions for Brentwood days.
So this comes forward based on a recommendation from the police department who wanted to see specific rules related to Brentwood days. We brought this to the Public Works Committee, try to create maybe a special event / Brentwood Days festival type ordinance, and it turned out that really what we needed is something very specific for Brentwood Days. So what we've written is what we'd like to do for Brentwood Days. Comes at the recommendation of the police department, and a lot of other municipalities have similar type ordinances.
Any questions?
Motion for a second read?
Yes, please.
Second.
Yeah, we got a motion for the second read and a second on that. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, can we get a second read by title only, please?
Bill number 6501, second reading and consideration for adoption, an ordinance amending Chapter 225 of the Brentwood City Code relating to additional rules, regulations, and restrictions for Brentwood days.
Thank you. Can we get a motion to perfect Bill number 6501 into ordinance form? Any discussion? Roll call?
Alderman Plufka? Alderwoman Tice?
Yes.
Alderman Weggie? Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller? Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Erger?
Yes.
By a vote of 7-0, Bill 6501 will become ordinance number 5129.
Thank you. Brings us down to Bill number 6502. Can we get a first read by title only, please?
Bill number 6502, first reading, an ordinance approving an agreement and easement with the Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District.
Okay. Are you handling this one?
I am.
Okay.
So again, this is something that we've done multiple times on Project Clear, down Russell, and somewhere else, I can't remember off the top of my head. But so Project Clear will be coming through the Brentwood Wetland Arboretum. They're going to, of course, coming right through the time where we're trying to do our project. So we delayed a certain portion of our project so they can come through. Our contractor has agreed to it. They'll do the first part. They'll come back, do phase 2. That has added a $27,000 to that contract. So we asked MSD to help with that restoration. They agreed to pay for all of it, as well as $17,000 for the necessary easement rights. The easement is very typical with any other MSD pipe easement. You just have to allow them to access to it. So we are asking for approval of the agreement and of the easement.
Any questions? If not, can we get a motion for a second read?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, can we get a second read of Bill number 6502 by title only, please?
Bill number 6502, second reading and consideration for adoption, an ordinance approving an agreement and easement with the Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District.
Get a motion to perfect 6502 into ordinance form.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Alderman Plufka? Yes. Alderwoman Tice?
Yes.
Alderman Weggie?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Erger? Yes. By a vote of 7-0, Bill 6502 will become ordinance 5130.
Thank you. Next up is Bill number 6503. Can we get a first read by title only, please?
Bill number 6503, first reading, an ordinance of the City of Brentwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor and/or city administrator to enter into and execute an agreement for the fiscal year 2024 street request for proposal projects between the City of Brentwood, Missouri and Gershenson Construction, and providing for the effective date of this ordinance.
Thank you. Dan?
This is for McKnight Road, basically from Litzinger north, just south of I-64. So we were going to do a sealant, and instead we thought it would actually be better to do a mill and overlay. So that's what this is for. So we'll take down 2 inches, put in new asphalt. And while we were at it, we did 2 bid alternates. The one is the northeast corner that belongs to Brentwood of Litzinger and McKnight, and then the other was the southeast corner, which is Rock Hill. We're still waiting on Rock Hill, so we really just need to approve ours. And if they decide to use this $16,525, it could be done via change order, and they would just reimburse us back. Because what we'd like to do is see the quadrants of Litzinger improved. We've gotten complaints about that intersection. It's not just McKnight proper, but the whole intersection there. So, and it is the 2024 budget's $140,000. The main McKnight is $130,240. Then that little quadrant that's ours is total will be like 144-ish. So we're still within budget, about 4,000. We have savings elsewhere that we can afford our 2 pieces. I just wanted to point that out.
Okay. Any questions?
For a second read?
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, can we get a second read of Bill number 6503 by title only, please?
Bill number 6503, second reading and consideration for adoption. An ordinance of the City of Brentwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor and/or city administrator to enter into and execute an agreement for the fiscal year 2024 street request for proposal projects between the City of Brentwood, Missouri and Gershenson Construction, and providing for the effective date of this ordinance.
Thank you. Chair would entertain a motion to perfect Bill number 6503 into ordinance form.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Alderman Plufka? Yes. Alderwoman Tice?
Yes.
Alderman Weggie?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller? Yes. Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Erger?
Yes.
By a vote of 7-0, Bill 6503 becomes ordinance 5131.
Thank you. Next up is Bill number 6504. Can we get a first read by title only, please?
Bill number 6504, first reading, an ordinance of the City of Brentwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor and/or city administrator to enter into and execute an agreement for emergency on-call general construction services between the City of Brentwood, Missouri and Castle Contracting LLC, and providing for the effective date of this ordinance.
Thank you.
In this particular case, we solicited for requests for proposals from different general contractors. So this would include, but not limited to, categories I listed here. So like clearing and grubbing, removing sediment. So if a heavy storm hits and we've got sediment, we need to clean it up that we can't do in-house. Installing riprap, culverts, irrigation lines. So basically any on-call emergency that happens, we have their labor rates and equipment rates, and we can issue a task order and bring it back rather than try to bid this out.
Do we have one
And
right?
this is on-call.
Do we have one on call presently?
We do not. Yeah, and this would be for basically a 3-year contract with 2 1-year extensions, just like we follow for like HVAC and things of that.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Dan? Can we get a motion for a second read, please?
So moved.
Any discussion on that motion? Do we get a second? Yeah, okay, thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, can we get a second read of Bill number 6504 by title only, please?
Bill number 6504, second reading and consideration for adoption. An ordinance of the City of Brentwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor and/or city administrator to enter into and execute an agreement for emergency on-call general construction services between the City of Brentwood, Missouri and Castle Contracting LLC, and providing for the effective date of this ordinance.
Thank you. Chair would entertain a motion to perfect Bill number 6504 into ordinance form.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice?
Yes.
Alderman Weggie?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Erger?
Yes.
By a vote of 7-0, Bill 6504 becomes ordinance 5132.
Thank you. Next up is Bill number 6505. Can we get a first read by title only, please?
Bill number 6505, first reading, an ordinance amending the Brentwood City Code to provide for emergency operations for the city and adopting an emergency operations plan.
Jim?
So essentially, what this is, we redeveloped the emergency operations plan for the city of Brentwood. We did it in 2020. Something happened in 2020 that diverted us from that emergency operations plan. We've gone back to it. We've added a little bit more to it as we brought in our communications manager into the operations plan. And once we did that, then we realized we have to have an ordinance because there's some things in the plan that authorizes the mayor and the board of aldermen to do, such as emergency expenditures, curfews, things like that. So that's essentially what is before you today, is that ordinance and the emergency operations plan.
Okay. Any questions for Jim on this? All right. Thank you, Jim. We'll have a second read on this in our June meeting. Next up is Bill number 6506. Can we get a first read by title only, please?
Bill number 6506, first reading, an ordinance amending Chapter 400 of the Brentwood City Code relating to home occupations and amending Section 605.1100 of the, that should be Brentwood City Code, by deleting the business license fee for home occupations.
Thank you. Are we going forward with this even though we still have a public hearing is open?
It's first reading.
Okay.
I'm just here if you
Yeah.
have any questions.
We all know what this is all about. This was brought up during the public hearing. Any questions since then? Okay, we will take that up maybe June, maybe July. Thank you. And finally, the last item under new business is Bill number 6507. Can we get a first read by title only, please?
Yes. Bill number 6507, first reading, an ordinance amending ordinances 3619 and 4863 relating to a conditional use permit and site development plan for McDonald's at 1595 South Hanley Road.
Thank you. Any questions for Whitney on this one? This is the other item that was under the public hearing tonight, which we did close. But we're still not going to take a vote on this. We will wait until the June meeting for this bill number 6507. So thank you. That's it on the new business. That brings us to citizen comments. Once again, if somebody in the public cares to address the board, now is the time to do so. We ask that you come to the podium and just give your name and your address, and you'll be given up to 3 minutes.
I appreciate the comment earlier about the residential parking permits and what have you, but that's not gonna stop traffic going through. When Brentwood South was shut down, people were turning around, going through Brazil, and they were still speeding. So whether you put parking permits or signs or what have you, it's not gonna stop speeders. So as a citizen, I'm concerned, and I wouldn't mind doing my part, but at the same time, you guys are here to make those decisions to make sure that the public is safe. So.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, we will close the citizen comments. Anybody on the board care to address that citizen comment? Yes, Alderman Gould.
I'll address that we do have a discussion about almost every street that has speeding issues at the Public Safety Committee when they meet every month. There is a process that's called Traffic Calming Toolkit that's on our website that the majority of the street can create a petition for, submit it, and then they'll put up data collectors to find out how much speeding is happening and whether or not a mitigation measure of a speed hump or something like that is needed. So I would encourage you all to visit the website where the traffic calming toolkit is, get that process started. And then I think it's also something that we have, I know that the Public Safety Committee has also discussed making sure that the officers that are dedicated to that area are also looking at enforcement of traffic violations already. So there's not one thing that will fix it all, but there's a layering of things that we can continue to look at especially Public Safety Committee, because that's where any recommendations will actually come to this board. This board doesn't typically initiate that unless it comes from the Public Safety Committee. So thank you for your process.
And I will simply add on to what Alderman Gould said, is this is an enforcement issue. You know, and we get hot spots around the city. You know, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, we added 3 new officer positions to our police department. We went from 30 up to 33, so it was a 10% increase. Still not enough. You know, we still have areas in the city where people are speeding, people are running through stop signs. We have a lot of stop signs, and we have a lot of people driving through the city. I reach out to our police department frequently when I see that there's an area that seems to be, we've got people running through stop signs, and the response is they'll put somebody there, you know, to kind of monitor that area. Same thing with speeding. So what I would suggest, we now know about Brazos as a speeding area. I wasn't aware of that. But now that we know that, we can ask our police department to give it some attention and see if they can maybe address that before any of these traffic calming measures can take place. Because as Alderman Gould said, that's a lengthy process that takes a while. But the real question is, what about right now? You know, to your point, you're absolutely right. There are families, I've seen families walking down Brazos to get entrance to the playground and to the park. And, you know, there is no other means for them to access that if they're parking on Brazos, which hopefully they aren't doing, but they're still driving through Brazos, is your point, I think. And so we can definitely ask the police to pay closer attention to that area and see if they can address that and hit some of the speeding.
The Brentwood speed limit is 25 unless signed, right?
I don't know that.
So there's not a single speed limit sign on Brazos. The other day, a FedEx truck drove by so fast, I went after him. He was going down on Manchester 50 miles an hour. I took a picture of him. I have his number still. And after that, he slowed down. Blockage of Brentwood maybe escalated that situation a little more. A little bit helps.
Right. Yeah, and I agree with you. That and it,
Observation, because I know there are a lot of police officers down at the park, but nothing on the north part of Brazos.
right. And again, that's an issue that we have. I wish we had more police officers, but you know, like I said, we increased it by 10%, but we just don't, and they can't be everywhere to address speeding. So, okay, we have no closed session. We have no need for a closed session tonight. So seeing that there is no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you mid part of June.